Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are for educative purpose. They will be very useful to good number of students. This particular series of lecture now, what we have started is clinical side. It will be helpful to you even first year, second year, third year, and very helpful to fourth year students. In oral exams, also some of the topics can be asked in your theory, and when you start internship and private practice, it will be helpful to you. So today we are going to talk regarding the second part of pulse examination, which is one of the vital signs. So we are going through the second part. We have discussed regarding the different types of pulse, rate, rhythm, different character of the pulse, etc. Now we are going to talk regarding volume, tension and force. What exactly do you mean by volume? It is the amount of uplift to the middle finger. So when you are examining for the pulse, the amount of lift what you get in a palpating middle finger, it is called volume. How much is lifted up? If lift is more, volume is more. If lift is less, volume is less. Then how you can compare? This you will have to compare roughly with your own volume, or you will have to judge what is the amount of volume. It denotes pulse pressure. And what is pulse pressure? Difference between systolic and diastolic. If the systolic is 120, diastolic is 70, so pulse pressure is 50. By and large, the pulse pressure is around 50. So if a patient has got a high systolic and low diastolic, the pulse pressure is wide, or we call more. So larger the pulse pressure, the volume will be more. Less the pulse pressure, the volume will be less. Classical example, say in a case of an aortic regurgitation, systolic is high, diastolic is low. So pulse pressure is more, and if the pulse pressure is more, volume will be more. So classically, in case of an aortic regurgitation, you will have a large volume pulse. While opposite of that, in case of a tight aortic stenosis, the pulse pressure is narrow, hence the volume will be less. Also opposite of that, in case of a high systolic blood pressure, pulse volume will be more, and in a case of a low systolic blood pressure, pulse volume will be less. What do you mean by force? It is the amount of pressure required by an index finger to obliterate the blood flow and to stop the pulsation. So if the force required is more, systolic blood pressure is more. If force required is less to stop the blood flow and to stop the pulsation, it is low systolic blood pressure. It roughly gives you an idea regarding a systolic blood pressure. By and large, these are not taken into consideration, but it does give you a rough idea regarding systolic blood pressure, while volume gives you idea regarding a pulse pressure, and tension gives you regarding diastolic blood pressure. So between the two pulse, what you feel at the arterial wall, it is called tension. It gives you a rough idea regarding a diastolic blood pressure. Little difficult, but still, if you can identify, it gives you a rough idea. So if there is a little increased tension between the two uplift, diastolic pressure is elevated. If there is less tension between the two uplift, it is called low diastolic blood pressure. Now, depending upon the volume, you can put them into different groups. They use some words like full volume pulse or bounding pulse, feeble pulse or weak pulse, or thready pulse. There is one method by which they put them into a different scale. Volume they put into different scale. If it is totally absent, it is called 0. If it is weak, difficult to feel, it is called thready or weak. Or also you can use a simple word like difficult to feel. When it is normal, it is detected very easily and obliterated by a strong pressure, we call as a normal. And when it is little, you require a more pressure to obliterate, we call a bounding pulse or a full volume pulse, or sometimes we also call as increased volume, and we put them into a scale 3. Now depending upon this, they grade the pulse. If pulse is not palpable or impalpable, it is called grade 0. It is very difficult to palpate, we call feeble or 1 plus. If it is palpable but diminished compared to the other side, we call 2 plus. If it is normal volume compared with all the different pulse, all different peripheral pulse and almost equal, we call that as a normal 3 plus. And if it is more volume, so we call bounding pulse or a large volume, we call 4 plus. Whichever way you grade them, either you grade according to this 0, 1, 2, 3, or you can grade 0, 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus. 3 plus is normal, 4 plus is a large volume. So whichever scale you use. So here scale 3 is grade 4, grade 4 according to this scale, while normal is 3 plus, while in this scale it is 2, scale 2, and 0 is 0 here. 1 plus and 2 plus is roughly equal to 1 in this scale, whichever scale you use. Now some example of a large volume pulse or high volume pulse, which can be physiological after heavy exercise, anxiety, exposure to heat, and during pregnancy also it will be a large volume pulse. As well as pathological, we consider high grade fever, thyrotoxicosis, anemia, Paget disease, hepatocellular failure, and I'll put one more, that is aortic regurgitation. While low volume pulse, where the cardiac output is markedly diminished, or we call pulse pressure is markedly diminished, like congestive heart failure, shock, peripheral vascular disease, severe aortic stenosis. This becomes the most common cause of narrow pulse pressure, tight mitral stenosis, pericardial effusion, and constrictive pericarditis, where the cardiac output is markedly reduced. Here the cardiac output is increased and there will be little wide pulse pressure. There is another word which is very frequently utilized is hyperdynamic, and this is called hypovolumic. All causes what we have mentioned before, they remain same. Here also they remain same. This is AV fistula, and you can add beriberi also. Now we go to palpation of all peripheral pulse. Once you look at the rate, rhythm, character, volume, tension and force, now you should look at palpation of all peripheral pulse and compare right side with left side. So which are the peripheral pulse? If we start from the top, now ideally when you palpate over the chest wall, it is called apical impulse. It is not pulse, but it is called apex impulse, or we call apical impulse, which corresponds to ventricular systole. But when ventricle contracts, you get an apex beat. But if cardiac output is not adequate, you may not feel the pulse. But in a normal person, one ventricular systole will produce one pulse. So by and large, the apical impulse or apex rate is equal to pulse rate. But pulse rate can never be more than apical impulse or apical rate, or we call apical rate. So this you have to keep it in mind. Now what are the different types of pulse you can feel for? The most common which we feel is a radial pulse, which is felt at the lower end of the close to the wrist, laterally over the radial bone. We call as a radial pulse. This is the most common pulse which we palpate for. Now if we go from the top, that is over the skull, in front of ear pinna, temporal artery, it is by and large not very commonly being utilized. It is commonly utilized by anesthetist during an anesthesia. They do feel for the temporal pulse. Another pulse which you feel in front of the masseter is facial artery. So over the mandible, you can feel for the facial pulse. Then in the neck, medial to sternomastoid, at the level of cricoid cartilage, you can feel for carotid pulse, which is the most prominent pulse you can feel. As we come further lower down, just above the clavicle, you can feel for what we call as subclavian, but this will be palpable in a thin built individual. In an average built individual or obese individual, it will be very difficult to palpate. As we come to the upper arm, in the upper arm, medial to bicep muscle, you will be able to feel brachial. And in a cubital fossa, again, you will be able to feel brachial. In the lower part of forearm, you will be able to feel over the radial bone, radial artery. In some person, over the thumb, between the two tendons, you will be able to feel the branch of radial artery in a snuff box. As we come over the abdomen, usually we are not able to palpate abdominal aorta or abdominal aortic pulsation. But in a thin built individual, you may be able to palpate the abdominal aortic pulsation. In the inguinal region, you will be able to feel the femoral artery. Behind the knee, you will be able to palpate the popliteal artery. Behind the medial malleolus, you will be able to feel the posterior tibial. And in the first interosseous space over the foot, you will be able to palpate dorsalis pedis. These are all the different peripheral artery which you will be able to palpate in peripheral pulse. So if you start from top, temporal, in the neck, carotid artery, if you can add just in front of the masseter, facial, then in the upper arm, brachial artery, in the cubital fossa, brachial artery, at the lower end of the radius, radial. Ulnar is little difficult, but you may be able to feel on the ulnar side, at the inguinal triangle, femoral artery, posterior part of the knee, popliteal artery, in the first interosseous space, dorsalis pedis, and behind the medial malleolus, posterior tibia. These are all the arteries which are called peripheral arteries. In any normal person, these are the sites which are being shown. This is temporal, femoral, popliteal, posterior tibial, carotid, brachial, radial, dorsalis pedis. So all these different arteries you can feel for. All artery almost except volume, force and tension, everything else will remain same. Now what we look is usually at the volume. We compare right side with left side and we look for whether any of this peripheral pulse is absent. Peripheral pulse will be absent in a person when the artery is totally blocked. This is again a superficial temporal artery. This is carotid. This is radial. This is brachial. This is femoral, site of femoral. This is the posterior side of the knee joint, popliteal. This is the posterior tibial. This is dorsalis pedis. Different sites which has been shown. Now we know that all peripheral pulse should be palpable, and if you compare with the opposite side, it should be of equal volume. As far as rate is concerned, rhythm is concerned, will remain same. It cannot change. But volume can change depending upon the size of the artery. If the artery is occluded, pulse may be absent. So you have to compare with the opposite side. In a normal person, all peripheral pulse are bilateral, equal and symmetrical. Equal as far as volume, tension, force is concerned. If only one single arterial pulse is not palpable, it is mainly due to occlusion by embolism. And classical example is in a case of a thromboembolism. So absent dorsalis pedis or absent radial is a classical example of thromboembolism. And one of the cause is infective endocarditis, which can produce thromboembolism. And that embolus will be infected embolus. Now, if a person has got fall in systolic blood pressure, carotid artery if it is palpable, and if femoral artery is palpable, the pressure will be more than 70. But if radial is absent, femoral is also not palpable, roughly we say that the systolic blood pressure is more than 70, less than 70 but more than 60. If all part, say carotid and femoral is palpable but radial is absent, we usually roughly say that systolic blood pressure should be more than 90. And when all the three are palpable, roughly we say that systolic blood pressure should be more than 100. This is not an accurate method. Ideally, you should take a blood pressure and record a systolic blood pressure. This is a rough technique which was being utilized long back. If all pulse are absent, very frequently it will be in a severe shock. And if the heart sounds are absent, no contraction of heart, no ventricular systole, no heart sounds, very commonly it will be death. If bilateral femoral, popliteal, posterior tibial, dorsalis pedis, all this pulse, we call these are all peripheral pulse in lower limb, is absent, means both lower limb pulse are absent. It is a classical example of embolus, a big embolus at the bifurcation of aorta. If unilateral upper limb pulse, all are absent, it will be secondary due to occlusion of that side subclavian artery. Say if right upper limb, all pulse are absent, right subclavian is occluded, mainly because of a big thrombus or thromboembolism, or maybe because of an atherosclerosis with thrombosis. That will be very important. Any single artery pulse is absent, it is because of embolus, maybe because of spasm, because of irritation, or maybe because of an external pressure by tumor or by, say, fibrous tissue, or maybe even a bony structure. Low volume pulse in a one single artery will be very commonly because of atherosclerosis, or maybe because of spasm, maybe partial occlusion because of a thrombus, or maybe partial occlusion because of external pressure. If there is a pulse which is of a low volume in the neck, say carotid artery, it will be one of the disease which can produce that is Takayusu, or in case of an SLE. And if a peripheral artery, distal artery, in upper limb and in female, Raynaud's disease. These are some of the things may be asked to you in your oral. You should keep all these things in your mind. Thrombosis will be always in a big artery. It will produce low volume pulse plus claudication. And at the site of occlusion, you will hear a sound we call as a bruit. While embolism is usually in a smaller size artery, or we call peripheral artery, and embolism will usually produce a complete occlusion, so distal to the occlusion pulse will be absent, and because there is no perfusion, that particular portion will be cold clammy, and soon you will get a dry gangrene. That is a very characteristic of an arterial embolization. In a coarctation in lower limb, because coarctation is usually in the arch of aorta or in a descending aorta. Whether it is in the arch or descending aorta, the pulse volume in both the lower limb will be low volume, because distal to coarctation there is a diminished flow, so that will produce a low volume pulse, and proximal to the coarctation the volume of the pulse will be high, because the pressure will be elevated in that particular blood vessels. Atherosclerosis will produce a low volume pulse in the affected artery, and distal to the atherosclerotic occlusion the pulse volume will be low, blood pressure will be low. Takayusu usually will involve the pulse or artery of upper limb and neck. So you will have a low volume pulse in upper limb, but artery of lower limb will not be involved. Hence, in the lower limb the pulse volume will be normal, while pulse in the upper limb and neck blood vessels will be low volume pulse. Classical example, it is called Takayusu, or it is also used the word reverse coarctation, because in coarctation the pulse in both upper limb may be of a large volume, carotid pulse will be of a large volume, but the pulse in both lower limb will be of a low volume if coarctation is after the left subclavian. If coarctation is before left subclavian, then in left upper limb and two lower limb you will have a low volume pulse. In a right upper extremity you will have a large volume pulse, because the pressure in a right upper limb will be elevated, and both carotid pulse will be of a good volume. But subclavian, left subclavian, which is arising after the coarctation, in that particular artery the blood flow will be diminished, so pulse will be of a low volume and blood pressure will be low as compared to right side. In SLE you will have a malar rash, arthritis, and you will have an artery being involved. Along with that you will have an involvement of the kidney, and kidney will show you hematuria, etc. Now aneurysm. Aneurysm is a dilatation of a portion of a artery. Very commonly you will see the aneurysm in a ascending aorta or arch of aorta, or in a descending aorta, even in an abdominal aorta. Whichever artery is arising from aneurysmal part or artery which is after the aneurysmal portion, the blood flow is sluggish, hence the volume will be low, blood pressure will be low. But proximal to aneurysm, the blood flow is normal, so volume will be normal, blood pressure will be normal, but it will not be high. In case of coarctation, because there is an increased resistance, the blood pressure is elevated, volume is high, but in case of aneurysm, volume in the artery which is arising before the aneurysm, volume will be normal, pressure will be normal. So this is the difference between aneurysm and coarctation. If you get dissection of aorta or dissecting aneurysm, dissection of aorta or dissecting aneurysm, in a dissected part there will be extreme pain, pulse will be absent, distal to the dissection, because there is no blood flow, so it will be a cold clammy extremity, and soon dry gangrene will set in. In a case of TAO mainly involves the lower limb blood vessels, maybe unilateral, maybe bilateral, and it may be unequal. Hence, pulse in one of the limb may be more involved as compared to the other limb. So you will have a disparity between the two limbs. But whichever pulse, whichever artery is involved, pulse will be of low volume, and distal to that, you will have a blood pressure being diminished. In Raynaud's disease, upper limb pulse are more involved, but it is more involvement of the distal pulse like radial and pulse in the palm. Proximal pulse are preserved. So it is a characteristic. You will get a Raynaud's phenomena when the fingertips are exposed to cold. You will get changes in the fingertips, initially pallor, followed by cyanosis, followed by rubor. This is a characteristic of Raynaud's phenomena. So these are all the things which you should look in peripheral pulse. And good number of questions can be asked to you in your oral. So these two slides are of great importance. So at your leisure time, do go through, and you should be aware of all these different peripheral pulse. I've forgotten to mention regarding a facial artery, which will be palpable just in front of the masseter muscle over the mandible. It will be palpable. Superficial facial artery. Facial artery will be palpable there. Now, when you compare right radial with left radial, if you get the difference in the pulse volume, you should compare together. You palpate both radial together. Normally, all pulse comes simultaneously. But if you look in this particular slide, carotid will come after the cardiac systole. So ventricular systole 30 milliseconds, brachial will take 60, radial will take 80. So brachial is little after the carotid, radial is little after the brachial, and femoral is little after the brachial. Indirectly, if you see, this difference is very small. So radial and femoral comes almost simultaneously, and both radial will be simultaneously. So when you compare right radial with left radial, in a normal person, both radial arteries should come simultaneously. If say one radial pulse is of a low volume, means in that particular artery the blood flow is diminished. Now, if the radial artery in which the blood flow is diminished, if it comes little after the opposite side radial, that we call as a radio-radial delay. This radio-radial delay will be because of blood flow in both subclavian should be simultaneously. But if there is coarctation between the two, say in an arch of aorta before the left subclavian, then you will get radio-radial delay. And if you get coarctation in arch of aorta or after the left subclavian, you will have a radiofemoral delay between the right radial and whether the right femoral or left femoral, whichever you use. That is a characteristic in whether the coarctation may be in an arch of aorta or after the left subclavian. So these two words you should remember, radio-radial delay or radiofemoral delay. For radiofemoral delay, you will have to take the pulse right side femoral and right side radial and compare the two. But when you compare with a radial with radial, it is called radio-radial delay, and that is for finding out coarctation in arch of aorta. But in case of aneurysm, by and large you will not come across a good delay. But still, sometime you can see a little delay between the two pulses. So radio-radial delay is a classical example of a pre-subclavian coarctation, classical example. And you might get, if there is a compression in a thoracic inlets, so we call cervical rib can produce a thoracic inlet syndrome, and if it is compressing one of the subclavian, you can have a radial delay. In Takayusu, if it is unequal involvement, you can have a little delay. In arch of aorta aneurysm, you can have a little delay. And if there is an atherosclerotic occlusion, usually we don't get delay, but we get a diminished volume pulse. So in this 4 condition, you will have a more of diminished blood volume rather than radial delay. Radial delay is a classical finding in case of a coarctation of aorta, and particularly if you have got a coarctation between the 2 subclavian in an arch of aorta. While radiofemoral delay can be in a coarctation of aorta, whether the coarctation is between the 2 subclavian or it is after the left subclavian, radiofemoral delay will be present in both the conditions. And lower limb pulse will be of a low volume in atherosclerosis, thrombosis, embolism, aortoarteritis, Takayusu, not in Takayusu, Burgers disease or TAO, etc. But when you use a word delay, it should be only in case of a coarctation of aorta. In all these other conditions, there will be diminished volume. See here, you are comparing right radial with left radial. Here you are comparing radial with femoral. So this is for radiofemoral delay, and very easy to palpate on the same side, right radial with right side femoral. This is comparing right radial with left radial. So this is radial delay. So radial delay, classical example is coarctation of aorta, and these are all the other conditions where you will have a diminished volume rather than the radial delay. But still, some person puts this into that radial delay. You might have a little delay in thoracic inlet, aneurysm, embolism, atherosclerosis, and Takayusu. If they ask you, then only you utter this particular word in your oral exam. Classical example, coarctation of aorta. Now we come to the vessel wall. In a normal person, vessel wall of the artery cannot be palpable because artery is collapsible. But whenever vessel wall is thickened, either because of atherosclerosis or because of fibrosis, like senile, or maybe because of infiltration of an arterial wall, the vessel wall may become palpable. So if the elasticity of the artery is preserved, it is collapsible, it is vessel wall will not be palpable. What you are feeling is a pulse, but if you try to roll the artery below your finger, you will not be able to palpate. But in an atherosclerotic vessel, because now the elasticity is lost because the elastic fibers are replaced by atherosclerotic material, now it is thickened, you will be able to roll below your finger. We'll call that as a tortuous palpable artery, thickened artery, and that is very classical in an older individual because of atherosclerosis. So atherosclerotic vessel will be palpable because of thickened wall. Arteriosclerosis in senile person, if it get thrombus, so completely occluded artery because of thrombus, you can be palpable, it can be palpable. And if it is inflamed and wall are thickened, in case of arthritis like SLE or periarteritis nodosa, and one of the example of giant cell arthritis is a temporal arthritis, which can be palpable and you can roll below your finger, but it will be tender because of inflammation secondary due to giant cell arthritis. That is one odd condition which you can feel sometime. You can even clearly visualize that temporal artery is clearly seen, and if you can roll below your finger, it is tender. So that is temporal arthritis. But in a younger individual, by and large, it is not palpable. In the middle age, what you palpate is mainly the pulse. In the older age, you can palpate and you can roll below your finger. and it will be palpable like a cord-like structures because of atherosclerosis, and in a very senile person because of arteriosclerosis. And another condition is arthritis, and if the complete artery is thrombosed, then it can be also palpable. Now, very important part we call as a apex pulse deficit. So understand this very well. Normally for one ventricular systole, ventricle will contract, it will eject out the blood. If the cardiac output is good and normal, peripheral pulse will be palpable. So with one apex you get one pulse. So apex rate is equal to pulse rate. So if you look for pulse and apex beat together, whenever apex beat is palpable, simultaneously the radial pulse will be also palpable. We'll say that there is no apical pulse deficit, or apex pulse deficit is 0, meaning apex rate is equal to pulse rate. Now a simple example, ventricle contracts, means there is a ventricular systole, but even with ventricular systole there is no cardiac output, there is no adequate cardiac output because ventricle is not filled completely. So there is a negligible cardiac output. Because there is a negligible cardiac output, the pulse volume is so low that it is not palpable. This we call as misbeat, or we call absent pulse with comparison to apex beat. This will happen when the ventricle contracts but there is no cardiac output, or there is no output. This will happen in a premature beats. So if there is a ventricular premature beat, ventricle contracts before it fills up, because ventricle fills up during a diastole, and ventricular premature beat will come in a diastolic period. So yet ventricle is not filled up and ventricle is contracted. So there was no blood in a ventricle, or there was a negligible blood in a ventricle, because it was a diastolic period when the ventricle was filling. Ventricle is already contracted early, that's why we call premature. So we call it a ventricular premature beat, and during this period you get apex, but for that ventricular contraction there is hardly any cardiac output, so there is no pulse. So you get apex but you don't have a pulse, and this is called apex pulse deficit. And for calculating that you will require a two-person. Ideally this is a worst method by which you can calculate, because one person is calculating a pulse, he can commit a mistake. One person who is calculating a apical impulse, so two separate people, you can see here, he is calculating, C is calculating the pulse rate, he is calculating the apical impulse rate or apex rate, and then if you compare, this is wrong technique. Ideally this is the best. You look for the apex beat and you see, you calculate which apex beat is not transmitted to pulse, we call which are miss beats. So you calculate the number of miss beats, and that will give you an idea regarding a number of premature beats. And ventricular premature beat will be giving you miss beats, but atrial premature beat, because there is a atrial systole followed by a QRS complex, so ventricle is filled up because of atrial systole, and now ventricle is contracted, so there is a cardiac output. It may be little less volume, little early, and second beat which follows this particular atrial premature beat will be of a little good volume, but you will have a pulse. Pulse will be irregular, but apex beat will be equal to pulse rate. This will also help you to differentiate atrial premature beat from a ventricular premature beat. Ventricular premature beat will produce apex pulse deficit, or we use the word miss beats. So in a minute, if you calculate the number of miss beats, That gives you apex pulse deficit. This is very, very important, and you have to compare apex pulse or apex impulse with radial pulse, and should be done by same person, and this is the best technique. So this is the best, this is alternative but can give you an error. So you put one hand on apical impulse and one hand on radial. This is the best way. So apical and radial, this is two nurse technique. Best is single person. Okay, so counting can make a difference, because one person will count for little more time, you will have a different calculation, and one person counts for 30 seconds and then he multiplies by 2. So always it is better to calculate the number of missed beats. That is the best technique. So normal person, apex pulse ratio is always equal. Put one hand on pulse and second hand on apex and calculate the number of apex beat transmitted to the radial pulse. In any normal person, heart rate has to be equal to pulse rate. If the heart rate is more than the pulse rate, we call it a pulse deficit, or we use the word missed beats, and this will indicate, classical example is ventricular premature beat or premature ventricular contraction. That is typical, very, very typical. Occasionally, you might have a little of pulse deficit if a person has taken tea, coffee, alcohol, anxiety, rheumatic fever, ischemic heart disease, etc. But again, these are because of ventricular premature contractions. Very rarely because of multifocal atrial tachycardia. Rare. This is another way now to look for partial occlusion of an artery or partial occlusion of a vessel. You put your stethoscope at the site of occlusion where you are suspecting. There are few conditions which will have occlusion and turbulence of blood flow at the site of involvement, like coarctation of aorta, aneurysm, atherosclerosis, and atherosclerosis with thrombus where you can have a partial occlusion, arthritis, etc. While palpation at that particular site distal to occlusion, you will feel some sound which will be palpable. We call palpable bruit. And when you listen to that sound with your stethoscope, we call audible bruit. Bruit can be audible on aorta, particularly if it is close to the chest wall. You can even get on common iliacs, femoral artery, carotid artery, etc. So bigger artery will be showing you this sign much better than a smaller artery. Sometimes you can get a sound also on a dilated veins, and if you put your stethoscope very gently on a dilated veins, you can hear sometime a sound. This is called venous hum. Say here you are trying to auscultate on an abdominal aorta, and if you hear some sound, we call that as a bruit. This will be audible if there is a coarctation in a descending aorta, or what we call as an abdominal aorta, or if a person has got an abdominal aortic aneurysm, or if there is a occlusion, partial occlusion in abdominal aorta because of a thromboembolism. This you are auscultating for the apical impulse. So you are auscultating for that sound, and you will be able to get in a atherosclerotic occlusion, external pressure by tumors, In a lower limb, you can get because of TAO, or we call it the thromboangiitis obliterans or Buerger's disease. In a neck or upper limb vessels, in case of a Takayusu disease, or in case of again thrombosis. Also distal to, just distal to coarcted portion of aorta. This will be very classical. Because of narrowing, you get a turbulence of blood flow, and that produces a sound we call as a bruit. Now, if the sound is produced at the level of valvular structures, say like aortic stenosis or pulmonary stenosis, those are called murmur. If the same sound is audible over the carotid artery, we call transmitted murmur or conducted murmur. The better word is a conducted murmur. In aortic stenosis, it will be transmitted to or conducted to both carotid, while in case of a pulmonary artery, it will be conducted to one of the carotid artery, that is right side carotid artery. That will be very typical. So it will be conducted to right carotid, while in case of a aortic stenosis, it will be conducted to both carotid. In case of a severe aortic regurgitation, if you put a stethoscope over the femoral artery, you will be able to hear the murmur during systole. Sound will be heard during systole as well as diastole. During systole, the blood will flow towards the limb, and during diastole, blood will flow back towards the aorta. This gives rise to a typical sound. It is called Durouz's murmur. Durouz's murmur. This is very characteristic sound heard over the femoral artery in case of a severe aortic regurgitation. So these are all the different sounds which you can hear in a, we call bruit or hum, or transmitted murmur or conducted murmur, which you can hear. I've already mentioned regarding a grading of palpability in a peripheral pulse palpation. We have mentioned there are two different types of grading, 0, 1, 2, 3, or you give 0, 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4 plus. So depending upon that. Some of these things you can confirm by ECG monitoring. You can look at the fundus examination to find out the arterial changes in fundus secondary due to hypertension and secondary due to atherosclerosis. It should be done. Best way of getting it done is by an ophthalmologist, where the chances of missing us earliest changes will be less. And you can also examine over the abdominal aorta by a Doppler and over the carotid artery to find out any abnormality like bruit or occlusion, etc. You can identify much better by getting a Doppler done. So Doppler will be very, very helpful to find out a partial occlusion or damage to the artery, and very commonly done in a carotid artery, femoral artery, abdominal aorta, etc. You can look for aneurysm, coarctation, narrowing of the vessel, thrombus, etc. So that can be utilized. And you can also utilize a digital pulse oximeter or digital plethysmography and Doppler ultrasound as an sophisticated instruments to find out the arterial positions. So these are, you can utilize even a stethoscope with a Doppler. It is called Doppler ultrasound stethoscope, which you can utilize to find out finest sounds also. There is one test which you can do it in a person to find out the neurovascular compression. This is called Edson test. Person is asked to sit or he is standing. You are putting your one hand over the shoulder joint. You are palpating the radial pulse. And what you are doing is extend and externally rotate the arm. You have to do the extension and external rotation. And when you do that, at the thoracic outlet, you get a compression of a subclavian and pulse volume will reduce. If you get pain, it is because of a compression, pain and paresthesia. It is because of the compression of a neural bundle. And if you get the pulse volume which get reduced, it is a vascular, that is artery. And this is one of the tests which will help you to identify what we call as the thoracic outlet syndrome groups. This can be due to cervical rib, thoracic outlet syndrome, and one of the components of thoracic outlet syndrome is Calenus Anticus syndrome. So in this group of conditions, you will have Edson test positive. So do look for neuronal symptoms and arterial symptoms while getting Edson test done. There is one test which is Allen test. This is very frequently done to find out the circulation in an arch which is present in the palm before a radial artery to be utilized for what we call as bypass surgery, CABG. This is to find out the patency of a ulnar and radial artery. You know that this is say radial, this is ulnar. So when you palpate, both blood vessels should be equally palpable. If both are equally palpable, almost we say that both arteries are patent. But in a case of doubt, what we do is you compress both the blood vessels. This will become pale. You can see here, by compression this becomes pale. You release one, you have released this ulnar, and if it fills up, look at the time, what time it takes. The time taken should be short. If it does not fill up, means that artery is occluded. If say ulnar artery is occluded, you should not utilize radial artery, because if you remove the radial artery, now you will have a limb ischemia. So this is the test which is being utilized, we call as a Allen test. This is typical. You are compressing both and you are releasing one. And you look for the recovery of a paleness. See here, there is a paleness. If it takes a longer time to recover, whichever artery we have released, that artery is occluded. And this is a very useful, simple test. It can not replace arteriography, but you can utilize before arteriography, and that is called Allen test. There is one test we call elevate the arm to 15 degree to find out venous involvement. This is called Berger's angle. You elevate the leg further and note the angle at which the limb turns pale. This is called Berger's angle. So if the angle is less, the disease is severe. So ask the patient to hang their leg over the edge of the bed. That is what we call the Berger's test. Initially pale, followed by pink, and then it is flushed purple red. This suggests that person has got arterial disease, and this is described as a Berger's test. These are some of the tests done in a selective conditions. There is one very useful test which you can do at bedside. We call capillary refilling time. This can be done in a nail bed and you can do in a palm. You can see here in a palm, the person is putting a pressure in the center part of the palm. You can see that. Now this portion becomes pale and it will turn pink again within 2 seconds. If that blanching time to recover, it takes longer than 2 seconds, we call delayed refilling time. And this will happen in a severe dehydration, peripheral shock, severe peripheral vascular disorders, sometime also in case of hypothermia, but classical in case of a peripheral shock and peripheral vascular disease. Also, in a case of a severe dehydration, because of a peripheral shock, you will have a delayed capillary refilling time. Same thing you can do in a nail bed. You will have to press the distal part of the nail, look at the pallor, relieve the pressure, look at the blanching, that is which has turned pale or we call white. How much time it takes to become pink? It should be less than 2 seconds. Then we call as a capillary nail refilling time is normal. If it takes longer, we call capillary refilling time is prolonged, and it will suggest either peripheral shock, dehydration, peripheral vascular disease, and one another condition we call hypothermia. Now say if we have to give a description, sorry here R is missing. If someone asks you, examine the pulse, you have examined the pulse and he asks you, tell me what are your findings? By and large in an oral exam the person gives only pulse is 72 per minute and he stops. No, 72 per minute is a rate. Then you have to mention whether it is a normal rhythm, that is regular, or it is irregular. And if it is irregular, regularly irregular, regularly there is an irregularity, or irregularly irregular. You have to mention that. Then you will have to mention the character of the pulse. Then volume, tension and force. Regarding all peripheral pulse, you will have to mention. Then you will have to mention your finding regarding radio-radial delay, radio-femoral delay. Here L is missing, sorry. Radio-radial delay. Then regarding arterial wall, whether it is palpable or not. Bruit, apex pulse deficit, Allen test, Edson test, and grading of pulse volume. All these things should be covered up in arterial pulse description. Say if someone has to mention, this person has got pulse 72 per minute, it is normal and regular, it is dicrotic in nature, bilaterally all the peripheral pulse are of equal volume and symmetrical, there is no radio-radial delay or there is no radio-femoral delay, arterial wall is not palpable, there is no bruit, there is no apex pulse deficit, Allen test is normal, Edson test is negative, and grading wise it is normal or we call 3 plus, or other way around, other type of grading we'll call as a grade 2. So these are the total description of an arterial pulse. So this is one of the picture I have put here. If you see such things, you should give a description that this is a dry gangrene, which is suggestive of arterial occlusion. So you should look for such findings and mention in your exam. Say this is a ulcer, a deep ulcer, and this is a gangrenous material, necrotic material. So this has to be an arterial. You can see here non-healing ulcer. Again, a big non-healing ulcer. Non-healing ulcer. These are all most likely to be arterial. On the plantar surface of the foot, likely to be arterial only, unless proven otherwise. So non-healing ulcer on the plantar surface of the foot, with this type of changes, this is 100% arterial occlusion. This is a dry gangrene. You can see the line of demarcation. This also finding, if it is present, you should mention. And look for skin temperature. Compare the two sites, whether it is warm or cold. The site where there is a complete arterial occlusion, it will be cold, clammy extremities. And we already mentioned, you should mention regarding a capillary refilling time, and compare the pulse on the two sides, and compare the pulse in lower limb and upper limb. Very, very important. I end my lecture here. I feel this lecture will be very helpful to you. If you find this lecture helpful to you, and if you like this lecture, please press button like, subscribe, press bell icon so you will get a message regarding a second video upload, and you can share with your friends. And this will be very helpful to you in your oral exam, because almost all candidate, something is asked regarding a pulse, something here and there in your oral exam. Good number of short notes are there from the pulse, and in your everyday practice you have to examine in a vital data. An examination of pulse gives you lot of idea regarding a good number of disease. That's why I've taken an adequate time and taken in detail. At your leisure time, please go through. It will be very helpful to you. So again, once again, I thank you for taking time out. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. And I feel this will be helpful to you. See you in the next lecture.